Hello, I'm Nadine Blaney. Welcome to Media Week. Ahead on the program, APN News Media shareholders vote overwhelmingly in favor of the NZ merger. Chief Executive Karen Davis joins us for more on the move. Plus, a new report shows social media is continuing to gain ground as a news source, especially amongst young people. We'll have more on those stories throughout the program, but first, 2 years ago, Mary Ann Azer was appointed by Australia's biggest magazine publisher, News Corp, Bauer Media and Seven West Media, to run the industry lobby group, Magazine Publishers of Australia. A senior executive with 20 years' experience in fields from marketing to agency management at Procter & Gamble, she this week revealed the MPA's new name is Magazine Networks. The rebanded trade body has launched a major new campaign with the objective of highlighting the unique role magazines in print and digital formats play in the market. Well, for more, Mary Ann Azer joins me now in the studio. Welcome, Mary Ann.
How are you, Nadine? How are you going?
Really well, thank you.
Good.
Just give us some idea of the scope of your role. I mean, are you out there selling the magazine sort of in an evangelist role, or do you have any sort of responsibility when it comes to improving revenues as well?
My role as an executive director is really to promote the medium as a total. So I'm not focused on a certain magazine, but the total industry, and not necessarily with revenue and numbers, but to promote the ideas behind magazines and how they should continue to be a great medium to promote into advertisers, media agencies and clients.
So we mentioned that rebrand in the introduction. Why relaunch and rebrand now?
Yeah, well, it's time that we tell our story. We have a very wonderful story. We have changed across the last few years. We've had a significant change where we moved from the printed product all the way to digital and social formats. And I think people are still have got this in their head that magazines is only the printed product. And it's about time we tell them, no, it's beyond that. It's a network. So we've got all the things that any other big brand would have, from a digital, social, as well as the printed product itself.
Not only that, but from what I understand, some magazine titles are going to pure digital.
Yeah.
Are you expecting to see more of that trend here in Australia?
I think you'll find that the trend will continue, but it's not necessarily based on the trend has to be digital. I think it's the trend has to look at the consumer first and what the needs of the consumer are. And we don't define ourselves by the distribution method as in paper. We can look at different formats depending on what the consumer needs are. So definitely in titles like Dolly, it makes more sense to go digital, while others, people will continue to want the printed product.
What sectors remain strongest in print? What titles remain strongest in print?
Again, food, home are always very strong because you need that feeling of seeing the things itself.
People need to be able to rip out and put them on their vision boards.
Exactly. And also it has been helped by big food programs and things like that, like MasterChef and others. So generally, food and home tend to be good categories. But again, as I say, all categories are doing well because we look at it beyond the printed product. So if you add the numbers from a total audience, and we produce a report called Magazine Media 360 report, which covers print, digital, social, numbers, our total audience is up 6.8% versus the last quarter. So generally, we have more audience watching us. It's just not in the printed product all the time.
And what else is helping to engage audience and influencing these purchasing decisions, and what manner they're doing so in?
You're talking about the audience as in the consumer. I think the brand is very important. So when I hear something from Vogue, I trust the brand, so I go and buy the product that it offers me. So generally, the brand name makes a big difference in how to influence the consumer path to purchase. And again, it depends on the category, depends on where you are. Different products have got different influencers on their purchase behavior.
And when you talk about the purchase behavior, if you are a purely digital magazine, I mean, is it hard to exist without having that paper sort of version as well?
No.
Is some of it lost in translation is what I'm saying?
No, I think people, there is a lot of overlap, and we've done very recent research that says there's a high level of overlap, over 50%, between online, if you're an online viewer of the magazine and the printed product, and vice versa. So people want to see both products, but also there are people that are purely digital based, and there are people that will continue to be purely print-based. It depends on what you prefer.
Your members rely on both ad revenue and cover sales as well.
Yes.
How are things going on both of those fronts?
I think the market is not easy on both fronts, but the publishers themselves are changing and evolving to make sure that they improve the revenue stream and look at different opportunities. So again, I'll give you an example. Vogue Fashion Night Out. A night that happens every year in Sydney, and it's a huge event for Vogue. There are a lot of consumers that come in there and a lot of advertisers that are interested to join. So such an example of how can you sort of evolve the brand to get more revenue streams through other areas rather than just the content that you provide.
Absolutely. Is Bauer still Australia's biggest
Yes.
magazine publisher?
Yes. Yes.
And they've recently appointed a new local CEO.
Yes.
So what's his background and when does he begin?
So Nick Chan starts on the 4th of July, and we're very excited to have him. I haven't personally worked with him closely in the past, but he's very passionate about magazines, and we're looking forward to him to start to sort of lead the business and take it to the next level.
Do you see a very strong place for weekly women's magazines in the future? I know that, you know, sales have not been great there.
Weeklies is probably the toughest market, but again, I think there is a place because there are always consumers that would want to feel that product in their hand, and they're not bothered to go online or other areas. But it's definitely one of the hardest markets to crack.
And I know that you referenced some research that you did most recently. What did it sort of uncover, broadly speaking?
So this was the biggest study that we've done, about 2,200 people that we've talked to them, and we've actually showed them 250 different ads, online and offline, and checked their ad recall, how do they feel about the product. We talked to them for a very long time about their magazine habits. And what we found is that consumers actually still love the printed product. The readers that are engaging with it trust it so much to the extent that 72% of the readers would believe and would go and buy the products that they see within the magazines.
So the ads in, say, women's magazines are not just flipped over. They're not just being ignored.
And
they're
that's,
actually being engaged with.
That is, I think, the key biggest difference for us and a point of difference as a medium, because people open the magazine and they want the ads. If I look into any magazine like a Vogue, I want to see the next Prada and the next Burberry and all of that stuff, because that is part of the experience I get with the magazine. They actually spend about an hour and 17 minutes reading that magazine. So it's quite a long time.
Now, do you have any sort of a global context for the Australian magazine industry? You know, I'm from Canada, and I feel as if, and I've got nothing to base this on other than, you know, women and people in general leaving the newsagent with arms full of magazines on the weekend. How do magazine sales here compare to overseas?
Well, we're definitely in touch. In fact, I was in Toronto last October attending the biggest publishing conference, and it was fantastic to connect with other markets with similar problems, similar issues, similar challenges and opportunities. And you could see there that you've learned a lot. We've learned a lot on how to take some of the models out of the US, out of Canada, the UK, and apply them here. We're very close to also the UK counterparts. And again, the market here is the pendulum probably swung too far compared to the US and the UK. And again, maybe because our media is younger and they tend to sort of go with the what's cool and fashionable and latest. But we're definitely trying to learn from them as well and give them our learnings, because they're finding our new campaign very inspiring, so they want to take it overseas.
Okay, wonderful. Well, Marianne, good luck with everything.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming in and speaking with us.
Lovely to talk to you. Thank you.
Marianne Azer is Executive Director of the newly rebranded Magazine Networks. We have to take a short break, but when we return, APN News and Media CEO Kieran Davis joins us with a latest update, fresh from the shareholders' meeting. Stay with us.
One in 6 Australians has a hearing problem. Let's put your hearing to the test. Each one of these numbers has an everyday sound. Can you hear each sound? If you can't, your hearing could be disappearing. Please call 1-800-425-125 now and get a free hearing check. Stop your hearing from disappearing at Audio Clinic.
Where do you spend the most time sitting? Your couch? Your car? What about your office? All that time spent in a chair has made sitting the new smoking, because your body was built for more than sitting. It was built to move, and Veridesk was built to help get you moving by letting you work sitting or standing as much as you need to throughout your work day. Veridesk arrives fully assembled,
I was actually quite surprised how easy it was to set up.
Put it on top of the desk and it was ready to go.
Veridesk instantly converts your current desk into a height-adjustable standing desk, effortlessly raises and lowers, and transforms your workspace into a healthier, more productive environment.
Is transforming the way I do my job, and that makes me very happy.
Go to au.veridesk.com to find the Veridesk size and model that's right for your office space.
Veridesk usually ships within 24 hours and comes with a no-risk 30-day money-back guarantee and free shipping.
Go to au.veridesk.com. That's V-A-R-I desk. Veridesk. Work elevated.
After the 7-seat Kia Sorento won 2 Australia's Best Cars Awards, Cars Guide Car of the Year and Drive's Best Family SUV, we did a lap of honour. Around Australia, Kia Sorento, Australia's best SUV.
Want top dollar for your property? Start by choosing the right agent. To find the right agent who'll get you the best price, go to agentresearch.com.au.
I want offers, big offers.
At Agent Research, we've researched and rated all the agents in your area. We'll show you who has a proven record of selling and getting top results.
If I'm going to sell, I want the best agent.
The wrong agent could cost you thousands. The right agent could make you a fortune.
Right agent, right price, that's what I want.
Agent Research is 100% free to sellers. We shortlist 3 top local agents who match your needs, and you choose the one who's right for you.
I want buyers fighting over my property.
Finding the right agent could mean so much more in your pocket. All it takes is a free chat. Just call 1300 622 732 or go to agentresearch.com.au.
To find your ideal hotel, just go to Trivago, type in where you want to go, select your check-in and check-out dates, and search. Remember, Trivago shows you all the different prices for the exact same room. Hotel Trivago.
Welcome back to Media Week. My co-host James Manning will be returning next week. Well, today, APN News and Media shareholders have voted overwhelmingly in favour to demerge NZME. Under the new scheme, APN shareholders will see their shares consolidated on a 7-for-1 basis, and they will also be given equal amounts of shares in the newly demerged business. 99.9% of shareholders voted in favour of the move at today's meeting. CEO Kieran Davis told shareholders the company can now focus on growth industries such as its radio and outdoor advertising. And Tony Henderson from Henderson Maxwell agrees with the focus on outdoor and radio.
They're very old school forms of media, but they're tougher to replace. They're not impossible, but they're tougher to replace in the advertising mix than other more traditional media like print, you know, and I think there's a real growth engine there. It's just concentrating on core, good quality assets, removing the distractions, allows analysts and investors to really get a piece of the action and to properly value those core assets. I think it's a great thing for the business, and I think there's still some upside in the share price there.
Well, for more on the company's outlook, APN News and Media CEO Kieran Davis is joining us live from Sydney. Kieran, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Liam.
Big day for you. Overwhelming majority voting in favour of the demerger, which of course includes the New Zealand Herald newspaper, magazines, websites and radio stations. So, Kieran, post that meeting, where is your focus now?
Well, obviously, we still have a few hurdles to get through in terms of some small regulatory issues, but nothing too serious, and we'd hope that New Zealand Stock Exchange will start trading there in the next couple of weeks. In terms of APN in Australia, our focus now turns to looking at our growth assets, which primarily is radio, ARN, the Australian Radio Network, and Adshell, which is our outdoor street furniture business. Both businesses are performing incredibly well in sectors that are doing very robust, very strong. Outdoor is growing at double-digit growth for the last 2-3 years. So we believe now we've got a portfolio of assets that are focused on growth. We've got a balance sheet that is now in a position to be able to look to go and acquire assets that actually fit very well with our overall strategy. And with a simplified business, then it's an easier story and a simpler story to sell to investors and advertisers. Yeah, well, you heard our previous guest, analyst Tony Davidson from Henderson Maxwell, is looking forward to this newly reshaped company. Just back to what's happening in New Zealand, though, could you give us a status update of any of the merger talks that are ongoing between Fairfax? Well, I think it's important to note that this demerger of our assets was going to go ahead whether or not there was merger talks with Fairfax or not. So that's one hurdle. What we've been doing is having some preliminary discussions with Fairfax around a potential merger in New Zealand with their New Zealand assets. We've lodged a submission to the New Zealand Commerce Commission about 2-3 weeks ago. We've since heard back from them on a range of issues that they want to investigate, and we're working through them now on those issues to sort of satisfy their requirements. And that if we get their approval and if we get shareholder and board approval, then we would sort of like to see if we could try and merge these two businesses together in New Zealand by the end of the year.
Yeah, so it's the New Zealand competition body that has concerns with parts of the deal. Again, what have the conversations been like? What is it, really being directed towards?
Well, we're looking at it from two aspects. Firstly, from an audience perspective. And if you look at the two assets, they're quite complementary in nature, and there's very little crossover. So in terms of diversity of content, that should, we don't believe that is an issue. And then from an advertiser perspective, a large part of the digital revenue growth in the New Zealand market this year has been for Facebook, for Google, for those sort of global social media giants. And that's advertising revenue that's leaving the country. And here we are proposing a large New Zealand-based media company that is producing local content by local journalists with local advertisers and creating jobs in that community. So, from our perspective, we believe the argument is quite strong, and we're hoping to work with the Commission to prove that point.
Now, Kieran, I know you have to mind your P's and Q's when we're talking in relation to ongoing discussions with regulators. However, a general question for you that can apply to the New Zealand business or the Australian business or the media landscape in general. Do you think that regulators, governments, legislating are responding appropriately to the big challenges that are obviously being thrown up by those tech giants you mentioned there, the likes of Google and Facebook?
Yeah, I think there's a very rational conversation being had. And I think there's a realization happening that traditional media companies, be it what we have in New Zealand or publishing assets here in Australia, that there's a realistic chance that these businesses are in danger of not surviving in the long term if we're not prepared to look at alternative solutions. And certainly from interactions we've had, be it in New Zealand or in Australia, that we do find the regulators are actually quite open to sound arguments that are based on fact. And that do look after plurality of content, diversity of content, and also ensure that advertisers are looked after as well. So we're certainly finding that the conversations are mature and very robust, but that common sense does prevail.
Okay, let's focus on some of the other news, I guess, that's going on around APN News and Media. Could you give us an update on the sales process of the Australian regional media assets? Last we heard there were 3 groups in the running.
Well, that wasn't confirmed by us. We had always said that there's multiple parties in the process. We announced that sale process about 8 weeks ago, maybe 10 weeks ago. We're pleased with how the progress is going. There are still multiple parties involved, but we're certainly pleased with how the process is going. It's a very attractive asset in its own right. It just doesn't fit with what APN wants to do and how we want to grow our business in the future.
Do you think that between $50 and $60 million for the business might be difficult to achieve?
We've given no indication or guide on price at all. That's been stories that have come from elsewhere, so we're not prepared to give any indication on the price at this point.
Okay. The business is now quite reliant on radio. How is the radio ad market going?
Oh, very well. It continues to perform well. It's had 3 or 4 years of very strong growth. The market is still up about 8% this year. ARN is performing very well within that market. I think in this advertising atmosphere where marketing budgets are being signed off at such short notice, that radio is benefiting from the fact that it's so immediate. You can get ads campaigns up straight away. And I think people are actually realizing that advertising on radio effectively works, particularly in retail environment. So, that environment combined with the audience levels that we have and the maintenance of strong audience that radio continues to attract means that the medium is performing very well. On top of that, we continue to roll out digital assets, digital platforms, multi-platform solutions to advertisers, and that is proving very beneficial to advertisers too.
And could you update us on the progress at KISS Melbourne? I guess it's been a little bit soft, a little bit disappointing since the rebrand.
Yeah, I think it's not where we want it to be because we do believe the show is a lot better than what the current ratings are suggesting. As we all know, it does take a long time to build breakfast shows, and many of our competitors are still finding that out. But we're certainly pleased with the personalities and the progress that we're making down there, albeit a little bit slower than we thought, but we've every confidence in the show. And as you know, we've got a drive show that's Melbourne-based in Husey and Kate, and they continue to perform very well in a very competitive drive market.
You mentioned sort of off the top when we were talking about the future growth prospects for APN News and Media, talking about acquiring assets and growth assets. Where are you looking?
Anywhere really that fit very well with our asset base of radio and outdoor, and that just doesn't mean that we're just looking at radio and outdoor businesses. We're looking to expand our audience base, we're looking to expand our digital and data capabilities, we're looking at digital assets that actually kind of fit very well onto what we do in radio and outdoor. So it's all those smaller and sometimes larger acquisitions that we're looking at. But it's nice to be in that position to be able to do that. And the balance sheet that we have in place now, the fact that we are not as exposed to publishing assets as we were, the rise in the share price that we've had, means that we're in a much more better position to be a lot more aggressive in pursuing that growth agenda that we have.
So there won't be a lot of accumulation of debt in this growth pursuit?
I don't foresee that, but if the right opportunity came up to make a larger acquisition, I think our shareholders and investors actually realised the potential that still is within AN. They realised the strong assets that we have in radio and outdoor, and as we saw with the recent entitlement offer that we ran, there's an awful lot of support for this company if we have the strategy right and if the investment makes sense.
Well, Karen Davis, it's a pleasure to have you on Media Week once again. We do appreciate you coming in on what was a pretty busy morning for you.
Thanks very much. Thanks for your time.
Karen Davis there, he's the CEO of APN News and Media. Well, let's take a look at some of the TV ratings, and this is for week 24 for free to air. 9 News on Sunday leading the pack, and that's followed by 7 News on Sunday as well. The Voice doing really well on Sunday, into the lives for The Voice. House Rules Reveal also doing well for 7 and 7 News as well. Now turning the page, and now we get into the MasterChef plate for 10, excuse the poor pun. Also The Voice rating well as well. But you can see MasterChef really does take out most of the top spots there. Now this is for subscription TV ratings, and this is for week 24, beginning with sport. NRL Bulldogs versus the Sharks, Rugby Wallabies versus England, we're a rugby union, AFL, and you can see it finishes off the list there as well in various games. Turning to non-sport, well, this is no big surprise. We've got Game of Thrones leading the pack on Showcase. Just looking out of the studio here, I can see the Iron Throne, I think it's called that, sitting outside the studio, and that gets a lot of attention from our guests visiting us here at Sky News Business Channel. Wentworth, Soho, doing well, as is The Simpsons, The Stalwart. Secret City, that new Canberra-based drama, is rating as well for Showcase. Haven't seen it yet. Looking forward to catching up, though. And Crimes That Shook Australia on CNI doing well as well. In other news, in the subscription TV space, Fetch TV has added Pesto to its video-on-demand lineup, which already features Netflix and Stan. It comes alongside the arrival of Fetch's TV's new third-generation set-top box. The pay TV service is also adding a new channel, Spike TV. Social media has overtaken television as the #1 news source for young people for the first time. That's according to a report by the Reuters Institute for the Studies of Journalism, which shows 28% of 18 to 24-year-olds use social media as their main source of news, compared to 24% for television. 51% of all online users surveyed use social media as a news source, with 1 in 10 using it as their primary method. And the advertising industry delivers $40 billion a year to the Australian economy. A report by Deloitte Access Economics revealing the contribution of advertising equated to 2.5% of total GDP in 2014, with its productivity value almost as large as that of the internet and other digital technologies. The study also shows the industry is associated with the employment of 200,000 people, including direct and indirect roles. Well, that's all we have time for from the team here. Thanks for your company.